Are you ready for the hot seat?
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. If there was ever a time where we needed activism in the trucking space, it's right now. And good news, with me in the hot seat today, I've got Jack Porter, the trucking activist. Jack, welcome to the hot seat.
Spencer, how are you? Thank you very much for getting me on the hot seat.
Well, my friend, I hope that my audience can handle the heat today, because I think that you're going to be dishing out some hot sports opinions on many issues going on in our space right now. But before we heat things up a little bit, why don't you just take 20 or 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
I would tell you probably the main thing that I'm working on with my array of clients and then with the TCA benchmarking is just the plain survival and how do we work our way through the last 3.5 years of recession in trucking. Probably the worst I've seen in 45 years of my business, and a lot of my clients, privately held trucking companies, are echoing the same thing. So it's trying times, differentiating times. So trucking companies are going through an abundance of just plain day-to-day costs and revenue decreases, and then day-to-day influx of all the things you see on the internet or even in the news today of non-domiciled drivers, DOT, fragrance, fraud. There's all sorts of things that are hitting this industry that we don't need right now, but it's all sort of coming together at the same time.
And we're going to solve all those problems over the next 30 minutes. I believe it.
They need it.
So let's jump right in. So let's provide a little context, because our paths originally crossed probably 7 or 8 years ago while you were facilitating best practice groups. And many of our audience know how passionate I am about the power that is unlocked through best practice groups. But I think would help, just you said 45 years. Give our audience a little bit of context in terms of your background and some of the things that you've been doing that would help people understand how that has shaped some of your perspectives today.
So I started with in the trucking dealership side. Actually started selling used trucks in 1979. So I've been with a couple of dealerships learning the business. Did a startup. That startup was probably during the worst time there was, 79 and 80 in the truck dealership business. That startup didn't work. Then we did another startup or a Freightliner dealership in the Northwest. That was very successful. My partner was Larry Gordon, who owned Gordon Gordon Trucking. Grew that to about 1,000 trucks. So we were close partners and learned the business at that point. 2002 sold out of that. So we did that for 17 years. That's still an ongoing concern. And then we started a company called Decisive. Decisive was going to be a software consulting firm. I fell more in the world of the consulting side of it. We developed a program for benchmarking, which emulated the 20 group program in trucking that's been going on for almost 60 years. And you, like I, feel like that's probably the best program any kind of business can go through, because it sort of develops advisors for you, long-term relationships, you share best practices, you share financial data, and that's what the whole TCA benchmarking program is all about and thriving. And then I've got 6 or 7 clients that I've gotten over the last probably 10 years that I work with them on leadership and strategic planning. So my background crosses over a lot of different scenarios. I try and be the voice of trucking without having the ramifications of a shipper or broker or a publisher to sort of say, you can do something against my business. And I don't really own trucks, don't own drivers. And at this point in time, I'm pretty thankful I don't. So I sit above the industry about 30,000 feet, sort of saying, hey, why don't we do this or that? So that's the background. That's where I've reached it. I work with a whole bunch of great companies, great people. This industry is got a lot of what I would call family-run organizations that are at this point in time probably dipping into a lot of family wealth to try and keep their businesses alive.
No, 100%. So I appreciate that backdrop. I think that helps all of us just have a greater appreciation for how you're seeing today by kind of providing that little background. Um, so you mentioned the best practice groups. You kind of have a who's who of who you've worked with in this space over the last, call it 10, 15, 20 years. Um, where do you think, like what happens within the process of benchmarking and best practices that folks don't fully understand, folks that have never been a part of a group? What's actually happening through that process that allows folks to operate at a significantly higher level than their industry peers?
I'll go back to the privately held family run. Number one thing you have to do is you have to have an organization and a leadership team that believes in continuous improvement. Otherwise, if you believe that not sharing information, not sharing best practices, not sharing data, not sharing financial information is something that's part of your culture, then it's not going to work. But if you believe in continuous improvement and you don't know all the answers, and even if you're good, you can always get better. It's the best program there is because you're dealing with people day to day or week to week on an informal basis, and then monthly you'll get a financial analysis results of how you compare and contrast against the people you know. It's not public corporations; it's people that you'll get together with 2 or 3 times a year. They become your advisors and friends, and just basically help you through the business. And sometimes those meetings are misery like loves company, which has kind of been the factor for the last 3 years. But then there's oftentimes they'll go through things of programs, software, vendors, things that are out in the marketplace that have been beneficial or not beneficial for their businesses. But it's a board of advisors. It's basically your board of advisors and a bunch of consultants that actually do it day in, day out. We get to meet We get to meet on a quarterly or biannual basis. And the details are all about how do we run our businesses better? How do we treat people better? How do we take care of customers better? So it's invaluable. I was a 20 group member for almost 17 years. I was a dealer. It was the most valuable thing I've ever been through, and I still consult with those guys. Matter of fact, I moderate that group. So, like you, I think anytime you think you know all the answers, you probably don't.
So what have you found? Because, on paper, you list out those benefits about all the things that you can get real-time feedback, have a much broader perspective to try to make informed decisions. What have you observed about trucking business owners, and when they resist that? What are the factors why would they resist that if it is a proven advantage?
I would tell you, um, probably pride. This business is a highly leveraged business, and everybody can do it a little bit differently. Everybody has a little different way of going about it. A lot of people just think they've got this secret sauce that their way is the best way, and if someone sort of steals their secret sauce, it'll impact them competitively. I've never seen that part of it. I've always sort of said, everybody that goes to one of those meetings, I don't care who you are, how big you are, how little you are, they always come out saying, hey, we always pick up 2 or 3 things. We always pick up 2 or 3 things that can make a difference. And in trucking, if you can find pennies, that's a lot of money in the trucking business. And I think it just gets down to the person that's leading the company. If they're really open and they really want to do continuous improvement, and they want to be honest and open with their financial advisors, which is all the members in the group, that's a win-win when that happens. I've seen it too many times.
So, what would be an example? I'm just curious of without naming names, somebody that comes into that environment, they put their ego aside, they get a little vulnerable, they transparently share the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on in their business. Tell us about a time where somebody took that step of faith and then consequently, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, had a much more valuable company.
I've got a company that I now actually consult with. They joined a group, and as they came into the group, we started spreading the financial information, and they ended up on basically what we'll say on the right side of the page, which basically means we rank everybody left to right as far as best to worst, and they were on the right side of the page a lot. they sort of start asking a lot more questions, trying to figure out how to try and get the data right, and then go back to their organization to fix it. Started moving a little bit further left. Ended up that I started working with them as a client after that. Worked on some things that I think are kind of critical in business. They changed those things around, and last month they're on the far left. But they went back to their business. They applied some of the best practices they saw. They challenged some of their people. They improved their reporting. And then they also came back with a scenario that basically incentivized their folks. So a lot of things worked in the same. This is probably over 3 or 4 years. But today, I would say that they've learned probably most of their wins came from the people in that group.
Yeah, I think that's such a testament to just the machine, and obviously it takes leadership and a strong leader to kind of push people to lean in and to contribute to those conversations, because like you said, a lot of folks don't want to do that, but it's pretty amazing what can happen when those walls come down and people start sharing that secret sauce, and just saying, hey, I'm not making it happen. How can, and ask the right questions and lean in and hold their teams back home accountable to go deliver the results. I love that. Let me transition, kind of fast forward into today's environment. How has the environment of best practices and benchmarking changed over during the last 3 years of one of the longest freight recessions on record, all kinds of challenges? How has that focus and the dynamics within those groups evolved?
Luckily, most of our carriers are still in play. We've had a few people that have gone out of business. Not many, thank God. But tracking the things that are going on, I think it's kind of interesting to me that in the benchmarking world, you can see some things that are results of the key performance indicators of kind of how each individual business is trying to address less freight. And what's interesting to me is that, we've generally have not done much with driver pay over the last 3 years. Most of my companies are really trying to do their best to keep their miles up. They may have a reduction in drivers so that they're still trying to protect their drivers and their compensation levels, et cetera. But when you look at the net profits and some of the things that are the end result of the last 3 years, it's worse I've seen in a long time. And I think the other part of it is that over those 3 years, we do a lot of measurements with regards to overhead and admin costs and the amount of revenue or miles per person inside the organization. So that over the 3 years that we've sort of looked at this thing going down, many of the clients, many of the trucking companies are trying to figure out, what do we do with our people? I mean, because we came out of a period that we couldn't find people. Then we found the right people, or we thought we found the right people, probably overpaid, and had a challenge with regards of, how do we take this down or right size it to what's going on in the industry. And I would tell you, even when I look at the market, we probably had 1 or 2 false starts in what we thought the business was going to start picking up again. So do we do some more cuts with folks and figure out how to right size the business? And that's added to insult to injury in the whole scenario. But I think watching some key metrics is absolutely important. I think running your business by the numbers, having a weekly operating control report so you know that things are moving on a weekly basis versus look at the financial statement on a monthly basis and now you're 45 days late into it. And then have key goals and benchmarks that you're sort of tracking to whatever the industry is going on. That's a key point. And I think the survivors are the people that run their business by the numbers. And I think they're also the people that are understanding the fact that, right-sizing folks and right-sizing the organization is the only way we're going to survive this thing. So it's some people are, I mean, bluntly, some people get it, some people aren't getting it, and the people that aren't getting it are probably going to be in a tougher spot.
Yeah, no disagreement there. Now you mentioned your unique position in the industry where you don't really have any need for a filter, and you certainly exercise that voice without a filter. And I love your perspectives as you share them on LinkedIn as I see it. And so, one of the questions I have for you is, you can kind of sense some of the frustration through some of the perspectives that you share, and even in the title of some of these articles and insights. So what is the rest of the industry not seeing that you see?
I think in this current environment, we came from, we talk about all that, we're protecting we're protecting jobs of Americans or manufacturers. We have a Trump administration that's basically sort of saying, hey, we want to make America great again and bring the American, manufacturing up, and we're tired of exporting or importing equipment, manufactured goods into the United States. We're doing the exact opposite with trucking. We're letting people come in the United States. We're giving DOT licenses away to anybody that can basically spend $300 online to get it. We've got no name domiciled CDL in out of California and New York and other states. No address on the CDLs. It takes you and I probably an hour to figure out how to upgrade our licenses, and these guys get a no-name CDL and start driving for people that they're basically disrupting the whole market. So I don't get that part. I'm sorry, but it's the situation is we need to not only close those loopholes and make the ability for people to come into this business a little bit more stringent and a little bit more safer. I mean, if you look at the accident that happened in Florida, tragic as it may be, but it was a non-domiciled driver for a non-DOT offshore broker sitting in California someplace and probably up and running again to go through that. So the key to this whole thing to me is that at some point, brokers or the end shipper has got to have some sort of skin in this game. The shippers are the people that are hiring these folks. The shippers are the people that they're basically saying, we'll take the lowest price there is to get our goods moved at any cost. It would be interesting to see if we actually had kind of a salmonella scare for some manufacturer and what the federal government would do to shut those people down. We have the same kind of safety scare with all these non-domiciled drivers that are in the marketplace today. We just need to get we need to get trucking back to a level playing ground. And if we want to make the best American industry there is, let's start protecting the American drivers and the American companies that are going on in this business. It's been a lifelong family-run, family-invested business more than anything else in America. And I'm going to tell you what, the onslaught of independent contractor status, the onslaught of some of these things that a lot of California congressmen love to try and go after, and they don't know a goddamn thing what they're talking about an industry that's really, really strong and family-oriented and safe. I mean, if you look at ATRI's numbers, since all this influx of 1 to 5 in trucking companies coming into the country in the last 4 years, if you look at the ATRI's numbers got safer all the way through to about 22, with the industry was getting safer all the way through 22, and then 22 after the COVID bubble hit and all these people started coming into the business and they continue to come in, the safety numbers have reversed. And I don't know if the country is ready for this unsafe scenario that's going on in the industry. So in my mind, we need to clean up our industry. We need to apply the same basics that we're looking at for manufacturing and bring back American jobs to American drivers. And I just think we need to get more tenacious about letting people come in.
So what, why is this a controversial issue? I mean, where's the resistance around this? I don't understand.
I don't either. I mean, I think, you can call it Biden, you can call it whatever else, but, you can get I mean, you can get a DOT license for $300. I know we've gone from deregulations in the in the 70s and 80s, late 70s and 80s, but maybe there should be some regulation to just ease of entry. The other thing, Spencer, is we've had, and I get this from manufacturing, we've had almost 33 months of shipment decrease every month. If you look at the CAS expenditures right now, CAS shipments are at a level of 2010. And so we're way off on shipments. And that's probably because of tariffs and everything else that might go along with that. And we're way up on capacity. And broker capacity. I've seen some of your hot seat people talk about, freight brokers and AI and how we take it, how does that meet the marketplace? I think they're way ahead on AI and they understand how to manipulate that capacity. But that capacity, by any stream that we look at as far as pricing goes, that capacity is being sold at way below variable costs, and probably to people that are sitting in trucks that came to this country. They're probably paying way below any kind of a subsistence wage, but it's probably more than they were making wherever they came from. It's kind of a mess, and I think if we want to protect the industry and protect the trucking companies, we better start figuring out how to make entry into this marketplace a little bit tougher.
So let me kind of transition there, and 100%. I don't disagree with any of that. So where's the opportunity here? You had a unique vantage point over the last 20 years in some of the best companies through all kinds of different cycles. This is certainly a unique one. I think we can agree on that. Where's the opportunity here over the next 3 to 5 years for trucking companies to advance their current position?
Oh, that's a good question. It will be interesting to see how trucking companies, not the industry, how trucking companies apply AI, how trucking companies start to try and take out or reduce expenses in that personnel range. It'll be interesting to see where automation goes. It'll be interesting to see, kind of where this industry changes with regards to the ability for capacity to be a kind of a one-to-one relationship with a shipper. So, which I mean is the trucking company actually has a relationship with the shipper without 2 or 3 different people in between. We're going to need consolidation. I'm just, you look at everybody in the food chain of transportation. I was a truck dealer. When I was a truck dealer, there were 750 Freightliner dealers, and today I think there's like 95. We have less fuel outlets. We have truck stop fuel companies are the same. We have less OEs. Trailer manufacturers are less. Everybody is consolidated. And when you get consolidation, fragmentation goes away. I don't see it in this industry in the next 3 to 5 years, but at some point, we've got to start figuring out how that one-to-one relationship, interrelationship with that partnership with that shipper and that carrier gets sort of handled in a way that both sides can win. This integration of low price, the lowest price, and the ability to sort of go out in the marketplace in a not really comparable. I mean, I drive up and down the road. I travel all the time. I mean, not to point out anything else, but I don't think I've ever seen a legitimate truck in front of an Amazon trailer anywhere. So we got some big players that are taking advantage of that stuff. And if we're going to have the status, we're going to have the family-run trucking company, which I don't think is going to change. It's going to have to figure out some way to sort of give them some financial, not only stability but profitability. You look at the OR for the rail companies, and in a bad time it's low 80s, and in good times it's low 70s. In a good times the trucking companies, they're breaking 90. We're pretty happy. So, and it's I don't know. I think AI is going to be another revolution in trucking. Unfortunately, I think trucking is going to be a little bit slow to the party. We got to start thinking a little bit more about it, what that strategy is going to be. But we just have to get the business healthy again, because it's not healthy right now.
So, as far as getting healthy, we need a little help from a regulatory environment, what it sounds like. So, I guess part of my question is if you had 5 minutes with a congressman or a senator, which one would you want to talk to and what would you tell them over a 5 minute conversation in terms of how we need help?
I think Duffy's honest things. I mean, I would to ask every single one of them. You know, during COVID, truck drivers were essential people. They lost that status within about a year. They're still essential. I mean, I think still 17% of the population is some form or fashion in transportation, and we move 75% of the goods in the country. And I think that just the onslaught against any kind of a truck driver, be it lease purchase or whatever, needs to be scrutinized. I really think ease of entry's got to be looked at. You know, it's going to happen again. The way these things cycle out, and the COVID cycle was historical, but they still cycle. The trucking industry cycles so high and so low, and at any time, either high or low, we have this variable. We have these variable 1 to 5 people that either make it or not make it, go out of business, come back into business. And we've got these traditional 30-year-old guys that have been in the business, gone through the cycles, do their thing day in, day out. They may merge together, whatever, which is your world. You see these families that either have succession plans or don't, but it's still basically family-run organizations that are just doing it the best way they know how to do it. So when it's all said and done, those people need some support from just, especially some of these offshore trucking scenarios that you sort of see today that's really sort of kind of a plague in the business and needs to be really cleaned up. And I really believe Duffy and the Trump administration are going about it the right way. And I just think that, I think sometimes congressmen and people that are not don't really know about trucking, and I don't think it's bipartisan. I think the reality of it is that we've got a whole bunch of folks that are from drivers, from trucking companies, from everybody else that are hurting pretty bad right now. And I don't think people understand in this country how bad this recession has been for trucking.
I say it all the time. This industry is not like other industries. And, without activism, there's no way they're going to know about it or learn about it. So I appreciate you kind of sharing your thoughts unfiltered in every way that you can. So a couple things, and we'll let you wrap up here. I'm curious, with the clients that that you've selected and you continue to invest in, what do you see as some of the best practices that have allowed them to navigate the last 3 years that could be helpful for some of our audience? What are some of the things that they've done or things that they haven't done, perhaps, that have allowed them to excel during this difficult time?
The most interesting part of kind of the biggest awakening I had when I moved sort of from my own business to the trucking business was the preponderance of KPIs focus on revenue and miles. And for 5 or 10 years during my group meetings, I kept asking millionaires, why don't you measure gross margin? I'm an economics major, so economics 101 says, your revenue-based model business, you're probably going to have a little bit of a tough time knowing when you can make or not make money. So everything I did was all about gross margin. So more and more we introduce gross margin. More and more I think that we do it on the benchmarking program a lot. And now it's a scenario that becomes part and parcel of almost any place I'm working with, have some understanding that's what we need to get to. You need to get your financials, you need to get your data to the point that at least we start measuring gross margin. The second part then becomes, okay, now we need to educate the folks on the front line where and how gross margin becomes part and parcel of the business and how it becomes successful and how it ends up being part and parcel of your compensation. I'm an incentive comp guy. I've had 5 businesses. Every single one of them, all my managers, all my people had some sort of an incentive comp in excess of 50% of what their pay was. And I just believe in that. I believe you have to have entrepreneurs. I believe you have to have people that have skin in the game. I believe you have to have people that basically understand the fact that there's no ceiling to how much they can make, and they're part and parcel of the success of the business. Not only on a quarterly basis or an annual subjective. Hey, you did a great job. I'm talking about every day. They understand how much they're going to get. The clients I have understand that, and the clients, or at least they want to get to that point. So my, and it's not common. That transition to understand what gross margin is in trucking is probably the make or break for what I see in best practices in my clients, best practice in the industry itself, and where you make effective changes with regards to not only people, performance, tracking, benchmarks, all that stuff fills into that scenario. But I'll tell you what, I just think when you just look at miles, and when miles start going down and our length of haul starts shrinking up, and we're still paying drivers by the mile, and there is no salary, so they're paying by the mile, and basically we're probably making more margin on these short hauls or regional hauls or some of the things that are going on. We have a conflict in the business model. And I just see that as far as change goes on, and the more trucking companies understand the fact that I can only spend gross margin dollars. I mean, that case I cited you, when we did the gross margin, did the math, put the buckets together, they said, what should be their gross margin? I said, well, the best target is 25% gross margin. Theirs is -2. And that started the whole conversation of how do we get better? So I would tell you, in the years I've been around it, and the biggest changes I have with my clients is those are the guys that understand it. They apply it in their business. They apply it to their incentive compensation, and they apply it to their goals and what they want to do as far as budgeting processes.
No, I love that. And just thinking about gross margin, not just as a KPI, but it literally is a mindset. I mean, it is a live or die scenario. And I appreciate that so much, because obviously you've seen the results of that mindset deliver absolutely elite results. And so I appreciate that's quite a nugget to share with our audience. All right, sir. Last question here. My question is this. These are challenging times. When you're looking for inspiration, Jack, and a break from trucking, is it a book? Is it an inspirational movie? Is it to go to a live event? And if so, what's been the best one over the last year?
That's a good question. For inspiration, I'm going to tell you that probably sharing time with my family that are all over the U.S. We like to get together with nieces, nephews, grandbabies, great grandbabies. That gives me a kind of hope for the future, and it kind of relieves anything else when you have we've got a kind of a new 1.5-year-old grandbaby that we spent 3 days with, and it's kind of like I didn't think of one moment about trucking when that kid's running around and tearing our house up and having a good old time. So, but the other thing I think is that I think is important is, this is when I'm with clients, having a conversation with a driver, especially a lease purchase driver, has bought his truck, and tells you his history or her history of how they got to where they're at, where they were coming from with where they're at, and where they are today. I have heard so many stories of people that were saved by trucking companies that gave them a chance to drive or gave them a chance to own their own truck, and now have got a safe house and a family, etc. So I still think that's basis of the groundwork of this industry, and I love talking to those people day in, day out.
Well, we certainly see and feel and hear that passion in everything that you do, sir. Appreciate you keeping it real and sharing it as you see it. Please keep doing it. That's going to do it for us in the hot seat, Jack. We will see you next time.